Hello, this paper is the Gender Social Practices of Dance in Jane Austen. My name is Emily Brooks and I'm a junior at Webster University, and this paper was for my seminar in a single author, Jane Austen. The dance manuals of the Regency period praised dancing as, quote, extremely useful to women whose delicate constitution required to be strengthened by frequent exercise. However, the characters of Jane Austen novels are more focused on the social implications of dancing. I will use characters from Northanger Abbey, Pride and Prejudice, and Mansfield Park to show how dancing as a nexus for social practices through the lens of gender expectations in order to understand themselves and possible future relationships. For this paper, I will be discussing dance etiquette and gender expectations, and how the characters follow the rules, show their personality, and then how dance affects their relationships. Women and men were bound by strict etiquette on how to behave during dances. The way that the characters in Jane Austen novels follow, bend, or break these rules of etiquette reveals their personality and preferences to themselves and others. An important rule of etiquette for dances is the introduction of new acquaintances and possible future dance partners. The propriety or impropriety of these introductions attest to a person's character. In order to converse with someone new or be asked to dance, formal introductions must be made by a mutual acquaintance or in a ballroom setting, the master of ceremonies. Catherine Morland in Northanger Abbey and her guardian, Mrs. Allen, do not have an acquaintance when they are vacationing in Bath. When attending a dance, Catherine, quote, longed to dance, but she had not an acquaintance in the room, end quote. It is not until she is introduced to Henry Tilney by the master of ceremonies at the next assembly that she attains a dance partner. This shows Mr. Tilney as a gentleman, as he is introduced to Catherine formally and by following etiquette. However, Austen characters sometimes do not follow proper introductions, which reveals their character as discourteous. In Pride and Prejudice, Mr. Collins tells Elizabeth Bennet that he plans to introduce himself to Mr. Darcy at the Netherfield ball because Darcy is related to his patroness. Elizabeth recognizes this as improper and tries, quote, hard to dissuade him from such a scheme, assuring him that Mr. Darcy would consider his addressing him without introduction as an impertinent freedom. It must belong to Mr. Darcy, the superior consequence, to begin the acquaintance, end quote. When Mr. Collins ignores Elizabeth's advice and introduces himself to Darcy anyway, he is seen as pompous for thinking that he is in a high enough social position as a clergyman to introduce himself to Darcy. By acting without introduction, he reveals he is not a true gentleman, unlike Henry Tilney. Another important rule of dance etiquette is that men have the ability to ask women to dance, while women only have the power to accept or refuse them. A woman can only refuse to dance with someone for two reasons. They are already engaged to dance with another partner, or they do not plan to dance for the rest of the evening. Catherine Morland and Elizabeth Bennet both avoid public dishonor in dancing with men who have already embarrassed them by saying they do not plan to dance for the rest of the evening. Catherine Morland is engaged to the first two dances with John Thorpe, a vain liar who disappears immediately into the card-room when they arrive at the assembly room. At the disappearance of Thorpe, Catherine is vexed because she appears to not have a partner when Henry Tilney asks her to dance, which is the person she actually wants to dance with. Catherine follows etiquette and is able to show her upstanding character by still dancing with Thorpe, even though he is rudely late, and she has a better offer from Mr. Tilney. Reed Walsh, a professor at McGill University, comments that Catherine properly refuses to dance with John Thorpe again after this, and correctly does it by using the general excuse of being too tired and not wanting to dance anymore. To punish him for his behavior and to not deal with him anymore, she bends the rules of etiquette. Elizabeth Bennet also employs this strategy when Mr. Collins, after already having an awkward dance earlier in the evening, asks her to dance again at Netherfield ball. Although Mr. Collins, quote, could not prevail with her to dance with him again, put it out of her power to dance with others, end quote. Understanding the rules of etiquette enables Austen characters to not only portray their gracious behavior, but understand the politeness or lack thereof from others. They are also better able to understand the lengths they will go to avoid others. The expectations of men and women were not only seen by their proper dance etiquette, but also by the expectations in the way that they socialized during and after dancing. The partner's perception of their social abilities determines someone's likability and manners. According to the dance manual Mixing in Society, conversation was expected when dancing, noting that, quote, if it be only upon the news of the day, a gentleman should be able to offer at least 3 or 4 observations to his partner in the course of a long half hour, end quote. However, the amount or quality of socialization being successful is completely dependent on the dance partner. Edmund Bertram from Mansfield Park is able to socialize in a way that is pleasing with their dance partner, Fanny Price. However, Mr. Darcy fails Elizabeth Bennet. When Edmund Bertram dances with Fanny Price, he isn't social and communicative. By the time they dance, Edmund says, quote, "I am worn out with civility. I have been talking incessantly all night, but with you, Fanny, there may be peace. Let us have the luxury of silence," end quote. He completely fails to socially engage her due to his irritable mood. Nevertheless, Fanny is happy and feels that it fulfills a social obligation, as her happiness comes from him relying on her. Edmund partially fails at their social duties by being melancholy. However, due to the bias of their dance partner, they are able to fulfill their social needs. Mr. Darcy, on the other hand, does not follow social protocol and does not have a partner with the forgiving tendencies of Fanny Price. Elizabeth Bennet knows that Mr. Darcy is not socially adept and uses the social obligations as a form of punishment. When Darcy barely talks to her during their dance, Elizabeth says, quote, "It is your turn to say something new. Now, Mr. Darcy, I talked about the dance, and you ought to make some kind of remark on the size of the room or the number of couples," end quote. Darcy asks Elizabeth that if while dancing she only talks by rule. By acknowledging this, Mr. Darcy knows that he is failing the social rule by creating a steady stream of polite conversation and only talks to Elizabeth while dancing because she speaks first. Whether or not Darcy socializes well does not matter, as Elizabeth only talks with him to punish him. They do not have the understanding of each other to correctly follow the other social duties. Understanding the social needs with your dance partner reflects on being able to better understand possible future relationships. It also helps characters better understand themselves and what they want out of a social conversation. Edmund understands that Fanny will take him sullen and distant, and until Elizabeth changes her mind on Darcy, there is no way that his socialness will ever please her. Socializing is completely dependent on the preferences of one's partner. The expectations of men and women also differ in the way they interpret everything surrounding the dance. Molly Englehart claims in her article, The Manner of Reading, Jane Austen and the Semiotics of Dance, that, quote, "Austen genders the ballroom in such a way that women reign supreme in its center as planners, information holders, interpreters, while men are relegated to a passive position," end quote. Many of the female characters in Austen novels observe the events happening around them and interpret the situations to better understand how others view them and how others behave. For example, Fanny Price is able to interpret the actions of others at dances. She witnesses how Edmund is distressed by how the woman he likes, Mary Crawford, really feels his future profession. This observation hints at a marriage engagement between them is unlikely, which satisfies her as she has feelings for Edmund. She observes the behaviors of those who attend the dance and uses this to better understand the possibility of future relationships. However, Englehart underestimates the interpretations men make throughout Austen novels. When Mr. Darcy is dancing with Elizabeth Bennet, Sir William Lucas hints the possibility of the future marriage between Mr. Bingley and Jane Bennet. Throughout the night, Mr. Darcy observes Bingley and Jane and interprets from his observations, quote, that his partiality for Miss Bennet was beyond what I had ever witnessed in him. Jane I had also watched without any sentiment of peculiar regard, and I remained convinced from the evening's scrutiny that though she received his attentions with pleasure, she did not invite them by any participation of sentiment. End quote. He also witnessed the many improprieties of her mother, sisters, and sometimes her father's behavior. Through those two observations, he interprets the information and decides that it would not be a good match for his friend and convinces Bingley of Jane's supposed indifference. Both men and women during dances observe and interpret the people around them to better understand others and possible future relationships they may engage in. However, the main difference is the men in the novel are better able to take action based on their interpretations, while women's interpretations mostly serve as a source of knowledge. Overall, the gendered rules and expectations of dance shows us the personality of characters. This is important as someone's character can show if they would make a good future match. Dancing in marriage shows a strong connection. One of the most important connections is that dancing permits characters in Austen novels to have a trial run up for marriage and develop a courtship. It allows them to better understand what they prefer in both a dancing partner and a marriage partner. Henry Tilney makes this comparison between the rules of dancing and marriage to Catherine Morland when he says, quote, "I consider a country dance as an emblem of marriage. Fidelity and complaisance are the principal duties of both. That in both, man has the advantage of choice, woman only the power of refusal." End quote. This observation is made after John Thorpe interrupts Tilney's dance with Catherine. Tilney wonders how he can make a genuine connection with Catherine if he is continually interrupted. His goal is to become secure with Catherine as a dance partner and to understand her better as a possible future marriage partner. Like Henry Tilney, many take the role of dancing as a form of courtship. Fanny at the beginning of Mansfield Park does not attend dances and prefers to hear about them from her cousins. As Nora Stolville says in her article, Every Savage Can Dance, Choreographing Courtship, Quote, Fanny's assumption that she will not join in the dancing parallels her assumptions that she will not enter the marriage market, end quote. Fanny formally comes out to society when Sir Thomas Bertram, her uncle and caretaker, holds a ball in Fanny's honor and also asks her to lead the dance with Henry Crawford. By doing this, Bertram is showing that Fanny has race and social position and is now in the marriage market. He publicly supports her. She is suitable to be a partner for Henry Crawford, both in dance and in marriage, and he approves the match. Due to Sir Thomas Bertram's support, Henry Crawford is given approval to further court Fanny. Henry Crawford, through the dance, better understands the benefits of pursuing a future relationship with Fanny Price. Dancing multiple dances with the same partner shows that the partner prefers them and is interested in courtship. However, consistently dancing with only one partner was considered unacceptable during the Regency period. According to the Fashionable Dancer's Casket, quote, favoritism is only suitable for private life. A gentleman should not dance frequently with one lady. When people share more than one dance set together, they are not only showing each other preference, but also the other attendees of the ball. Although it is frowned upon, it happens quite often in Austen novels. In Pride and Prejudice, Mrs. Bennet excitedly recounts Mr. Bingley dancing with Jane Bennet by saying to her husband, quote, Mr. Bingley thought her quite beautiful and danced with her twice. Only think of that, my dear. He actually danced with her twice, and she was the only creature in the room that he asked for a second time, end quote. This shows everyone that Mr. Bingley, upon first impression, prefers Jane Bennet over the other woman at the ball, which is seen as he continually sees her afterwards. This shows to both Jane and others, like her mother, there's a possibility of future courting and marriage engagement. While dancing can show preferences towards a partner, it can also reveal how someone can have an aversion towards their dance partner and a distaste for being their spouse. Elizabeth is forced to dance with Mr. Collins, who is hoping to gain her favor. However, they were, quote, dances of mortification. Mr. Collins, awkward and solemn, apologizing instead of attending, and often moving wrong without being aware of it, gave her all the shame and misery which a disagreeable partner can give, end quote. This scene shows how unpleasant Mr. Collins is as a dance partner. According to Cheryl Wilson in her article, Dancing with Jane Austen, History and Practice in the Classroom, Mr. Collins' dancing can be translated into a similar awkward and solemn marriage partnership that would be emotionally unsatisfying. Dance is used to show the ineptitude of both Collins' character and him as a partner, and Elizabeth discovering her displeasure towards him as a possible spouse. Mary Crawford is also able to show her true feelings toward Edmund Bertram through dance. While she agrees to be his partner for the first two dances at Mansfield Park, Edmund tells Fanny that, quote, Mary says it is to be the last time that she will ever dance with me. She never has danced with a clergyman, she says, and she never will, end quote. Mary has a displeasure with Edmund's future career as a clergyman and consistently heckles him about it. However, Edmund is hoping that she will learn to accept it and will accept the future proposal. If Mary thinks she is too good to dance with a clergyman, then she will never marry one. Her opinions on dancing reveals to Edmund the slim possibility of them having a future marriage together. In both novels, Austen illustrates how having an unpleasant dance or a refusal to dance can show a character's unwillingness to marry them. Mary Crawford and Elizabeth Bennet show that if they do not want to dance with the person, they certainly do not want to marry them. During the Regency period, the rules of etiquette, expectations, and the stigma against openly courting a partner makes it difficult for characters to understand the people around them. Northanger Abbey, Pride and Prejudice, and Mansfield Park each have characters that are able to utilize dance in order to learn about themselves and the possibility of future relationships. The ways that they follow or bend the rules of etiquette, meet or fail gendered expectations, and how they show preference to their potential romantic partners reveals their personalities to others and the readers. Thank you. Here's my works cited for the books and articles that I used for this paper. I hope you have a good rest of your day.